Hi everybody, my name is Jens Larsen. You probably want to check out Coltrane Patterns, not so much because they're connected to John Coltrane, even though if you're interested in jazz that might actually be reason enough, but more because they're very common melodies and they're small practical building blocks that are easy to play on most instruments, and you can use them in a lot of different places on a lot of different chords in your solos. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar, about improvising over chord changes, checking out some interesting arpeggios or scales, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to make sure not to miss anything, then click the little bell notification icon next to the subscribe button. It's likely that you know the sound of the Coltrane Patterns from his solos on the Giant Steps album. And similar to what I'm playing here in the background, that is of course one place where you can use them. But in this video I'm going to look at them in a little bit more of a general way, because I find that they're so useful and that you can apply them to pretty much any type of chord and any type of progression, and there's no real need to limit ourselves to just the Coltrane cycle. The first thing we need to look at is what is a Coltrane pattern. So you can of course define them in many ways. I prefer to kind of look at them as being the first four notes of a pentatonic scale. The reason why I'm doing that is because then we have sort of a really nice well-defined version of it for both major and minor. So in this case, if we take a C major pentatonic scale, so C, D, E, G, A, and then the first four notes of that will be C, D, E, G. So that makes it a C major triad with an added 9 as a melodic note or a second. And if we look at an A minor pentatonic scale, then that's A, C, D, E, G. And the first four notes would be A, C, D, E. So that means that we have C, D, E, G for a C major chord, and we have A, C, D, E for a minor chord, for an A minor chord. With a major and a minor version of the Coltrane patterns, we can look at them as being sort of the triad from the root and then an added extension that's sort of fairly neutral. So that means that if we look at it from the C, so we have the C major triad and then an added 9th, and from the A minor we have the A minor triad with an added 11th. So we have four notes. What makes them easy to play is that they have a fairly small range, because they are in total four notes within a fifth. So that makes them easy to repeat on guitar. I think one of the ways where you can use them, especially if you want to repeat the pattern, is to just use that you can easily move around in octaves with this. So if we take the C major one as an example, so we can play this with two notes on each string. That will be this. We can also play it with three notes on one string and then one on the next, then we get this pattern. And this is really easy if you use economy picking, because then you can actually sweep for three strings, so you get... And I think Frank Gambale would probably prefer to use that. Another way of doing it is to have it not on two strings, but then on three strings. So you would have one note, and then two notes, and then one note. This is easy if you want to use legato in your playing, so of course the last one I have three notes on one string because I don't have a seventh high string here. But in this way we have sort of different techniques that you can use, and probably you want to check out all of them, and in different situations different solutions are going to work. Besides just knowing them like this, you probably also want to check them out using a little bit the different patterns that you have available. So, or just playing them descending, or other ways of playing them and other ways of making melodies with these four notes. Now that we have a major and a minor version of the Coltrane pattern, and we also have a nice way of playing them in several octaves, let's just look at how this really fits well in a major scale. So I'm just going to do this with a G major scale. So this scale, really this is going to follow the basic chords of the scale. So for the first chord, G major, we have the G major Coltrane pattern. For the A minor, we have this A minor Coltrane pattern, same for B minor. The fourth degree C major 7 and D7, E minor, and then the last one, which is F sharp half diminished. So here we don't really have a well-defined version, because this is not strictly a minor chord or strictly a major chord. So the Coltrane pattern, if we use the minor Coltrane pattern and then lower the fifth, then we have this one, which is probably the best candidate. I'm not really going to go into that too much for this video. I'm going to save that for another video. As you can see, in this way we have the Coltrane patterns for all the diatonic chords, and they're all in the scale. So we don't have a definition where, for instance, if you use 1, 2, 3, 5, then the one on the third degree would actually have a note that's not in the scale, so that doesn't really make too much sense. That's a very practical way of looking at it. The next thing we can start looking at is how can we apply this to some of the chords. So the easy way to look at this is of course just to use a 2-5-1 in the key of G. So now we have A minor, D7 to G major. And what I find is that of course the one from the root will work really well. So for the A minor 7 that will be, and clearly the one for the D7, this one will work as well. And for the G we can also use the basic one from G. We can also take it a little bit further because actually the one from the fifth of the chord is also always going to work really well. So that would be, in the case of the A minor, that's the one from E minor. So that would be this pattern. So you can have something like for a 2-5-1 line, where I'm just starting with the Coltrane pattern from E, and then going into a Cmaj7 arpeggio. If we do the same, so for the D7, the fifth is A, and the Coltrane pattern is this A minor pattern. And you can link that to a D7 arpeggio like this. So in that way, that's a pattern that works really nicely for a 5-1 in G. For the G major, the fifth is D, and the Coltrane pattern we have up there is this one. If you're familiar with the jazz standard Out of Nowhere, then that's actually the melody there. So that's a Coltrane pattern from the fifth of the chord on a major 7. I think you'll find that this is a very common pattern. You can also tell from that it's not something that Coltrane invented. He just tried to use a specific pattern, and I doubt if he really made it into that much of a system, but of course I can't know that for sure. So in that respect, this is a good example of where you will find that this is used in really a lot of other contexts than just John Coltrane and giant steps. As I mentioned, you can describe the Coltrane patterns as the basic triad plus a fairly neutral extension, and that makes them sound sort of simple or basic, but that's actually something that we can use and get a lot out of if we want to use them to superimpose them on other chords, and that's one way that I use them quite often. I'm going to go over 2 examples for this. They're both coming out of melodic minor material because that's just one of the sounds that I use really a lot, and the first one would be to use the E major Coltrane pattern, so this sound on top of a Cmaj7 Shell-5, so a Cmaj7 Lydian Augmented. So when we're playing the E major Coltrane pattern, then we are playing the third, the Sharp-11, the Sharp-5, and the major 7. So really, except for the root, we just have all the important notes of the Lydian Augmented sound, and that sounds like this. Another place where we can put this to use is on an altered dominant. So if we stay with the A melodic minor, then the altered dominant we have associated with that scale would be A flat 7 altered. And if I'm using the same Coltrane pattern on that, so that would be the one from E, then we have these 4 notes relative to the A flat root, then that's a flat 13, the flat 7, the root, and the sharp 9. So a pretty good picture of an altered dominant really. And a line with that could be something like this. So we really have all the altered tensions in there, and then a really simple melody using 4 notes that resolves nicely up to the major 7 on the D flat major 7. That demonstrates how we can use these Coltrane patterns in a very simple, basic way that's really closely related to the chord, but also how they work extremely well if you want to superimpose them on top of other structures and really spell out more complicated sounds. I'm of course curious if you have a way that you're using these Coltrane patterns and where you're using them, or some great ideas for how you can put them into your solos, or if you play them in a different way than what I do. So if you have something to share on this topic, then please leave a comment on this video. Of course, if you're watching this, you're interested in it, and if somebody else has something to share, then you probably want to check that out. So check out what's going on in the comments. There's usually a lot of interesting and important information being shared down there. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar and this is the first time you see one of my videos, then subscribe to my channel. The videos that I publish here every week are on finding some solid methods and great strategies for checking out all the interesting things about playing jazz guitar and improvising. If you like this video and you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. It's because of the support that I'm getting from my patrons that I can keep on publishing videos every week. I'm very grateful for that, and if you join us over on Patreon, I can also give you something in return for your support. That's about it for this week. Thank you for watching, and until next week.